want you to act as if the house is on fire, because it is. So said Greta Thunberg in relation to climate change. Hi, I'm Charles. I'm a psychiatrist who has a special interest in diets that protect your heart and at the same time protect the planet.
And hi, my name is Sinead. I recently finished a diploma in public health. So I am also very interested in diets that can help with combating climate change and the climate emergency, as well as protecting your heart. So today we're going to continue talking about climate change and diets that are sustainable for the planet and how our present patterns of eating are just not sustainable for the future in terms of greenhouse gases and, in fact, the destruction of wildlife.
Yes, Sinead, and we don't want to be alarmist, but what we're talking about and saying is all based on very solid scientific research. And if we don't make changes, the future that we're facing is very bleak. But the good news is there are simple things that we can all do to fundamentally change and improve things. And one of the easiest things that we can change is what we eat. Simply by eating less meat or going vegetarian, and if enough people do it, we can make a really positive change to the way the planet is heading.
Absolutely, Charles. And of course, diet is not the only thing that we can change, but we actually have recommended few diets, and those diets you can find in the first 3 episodes of Your Heart, Our Planet, this podcast. So if you want to have a look at that, I would highly recommend it. So obviously, as I said, the diet's not the only thing you can do. We can change as a collective by our use of energy and sources that don't rely on fossil fuels like wind and solar power, and we can choose to travel actually in a more green way by using electric or hybrid cars and taking public transport, or even active travel like cycling whenever we can. And all of these things are simple ways that we can move the planet's future in the right direction. And actually, cycling and active travel are incredibly good for your heart as well as the planet as well. So that's another thing that you can do to help combat climate change. But we're going to get into now animal agriculture again. Yeah. Because we've more to say on animal agriculture.
Yeah. And so just taking up where we left off on our last podcast, we were talking about how there's differences between scientists on how much animal agriculture affects greenhouse gases and what percentage of greenhouse gases actually come from animal farming or animal agriculture.
And we were talking about the GWP, the greenhouse... Sorry, not the GWP. I've misspoke.
Global warming
potential. Yeah, it is the GWP,
yes,
but
right.
It's the global warming potential of methane. So we'll continue on from there.
And just to remind people what that is, that means how many times more powerful methane is than carbon dioxide in producing climate change, and it's a lot more powerful. The different figures go between 25 and 72 times more powerful. And so if we can, as we were saying, if we can reduce methane, it's like a low-hanging fruit. It's something that can make a very radical improvement as far as climate change goes.
Yeah.
So there's been a very recent and accurate study of the proportion of greenhouse gases that come from animal agriculture, which was done by the University of Illinois, by scientists there, and it was published in the highly prestigious scientific journal Nature Food.
You're a big fan of this study, Charles.
Yes, I'm always quoting it. And Nature Food is a part of it's a subsidiary of the highly prestigious Nature journal, which is probably the #1 science journal in the world. So this is, when you find an article in that, it's a very high quality piece of research that's been peer reviewed, etc. So this study, which was published in 2021, and the lead author was, it's a difficult name to pronounce, Xiangmin Zhu.
Yeah.
XU is his surname. And the title of the article is Global Greenhouse Gas Emissions from Animal-Based Foods Are Twice Those of Plant-Based Foods. So it's a major finding. Essentially what they found is that food production as a whole, both animal and plants, cause the 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. But of that 30%, 20% are produced by animal agriculture. And so producing plant foods only produces, which is much more numerous than animal agriculture, only produces 10% of greenhouse gases. So that's an enormous contribution. It puts, and it's very rigorously done. And you may ask, well, why do other estimates show lower amounts of greenhouse gases from animal agriculture? What they found in the article is we talked about how pasture land and growing crops for animals actually reduces the carbon imprint of that sector, because the grass takes in
a certain amount
carbon
of
dioxide and gives off oxygen. But compared, as we said before, compared to a forest, it's minuscule. I think the figures we said
it was 200 versus 8.
Yes.
So 200 was the forest land, and 8 was
the grassland.
The grassland, yeah.
So saying that the pasture and the crops compensated for the other greenhouse gases given off by animal agriculture, that was overestimated according to the findings in this paper.
Oh, wow.
And that's a big reason why the figure of 20% was arrived at. So in other words, if you're eating a lot of meat, you're eating a food that produces large amounts of greenhouse gases. Whereas if you're eating a plant-based diet, you're eating foods that produce small amounts of greenhouse gases. And that stands to reason, because if you're looking at crops are plants. Plants do photosynthesis, so they take in CO2 and they give oxygen.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, it makes sense. So the article, as we said, the title is indicates that plant foods, animal-based foods, gives off twice as much greenhouse gases. And so I'd like just now talk a little bit about methane. We mentioned it before. Just to underline now, the number one cause of greenhouse gases is burning fossil fuels.
Yes.
But the 20% figure puts the second largest by far cause of greenhouse gases as animal agriculture.
Even more so than travel, I think. Which would surprise some people, I think.
Even more than the entire global transport sector. Animal agriculture gives off more greenhouse gases. So when you think about the amount of effort and time that's been put into making travel greener.
I know, and I don't feel the same effort is being made to reduce animal agriculture.
No, people don't know about it at all in the same way. And I think that's something that really needs to be addressed, because it's something that everyone can do just by eating less meat. Eating meat only once a day and having one vegetarian meal a week, one vegetarian day a week. Those kind of simple things can enormously be beneficial.
I was at a study week, and we had in the canteen they did meatless Mondays, and I thought that was really good, to have a meatless Monday. I think, and it kind of rolls off the tongue.
They do that in Belgium as well. They have meatless Mondays. So just moving on to talk a little bit about methane in animal agriculture. A study in 2017 showed that animal agriculture's global methane emissions were actually 11% higher than previous estimates. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization's report in 2006 estimated that livestock's contributed 37% of methane emissions. So 30% of methane emissions globally come from animal agriculture. And as described previously, methane has many times the global warming effect of carbon dioxide. And another very relevant factor is that the lifetime of methane released into the atmosphere is about 12 years. But that compares to carbon dioxide, which stays in the atmosphere for between 30 and 95 years. So even if, because carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere so long, even if we drastically reduce the amounts of emissions of carbon dioxide, it would take decades before it actually went from the atmosphere.
Whereas methane
if you can reduce methane emissions, it's 12 years, which is significantly shorter before it goes from the atmosphere.
So how do we do that?
And one of the ways, again, is by eating less meat. We can reduce methane emissions. And that would have a much more rapid effect on reducing global warming compared to reducing carbon dioxide. Additionally, animal agriculture produces 68% of gut-produced nitrous oxide emissions. Nitrous oxide is another gas that causes global warming, and this gas remains in the atmosphere once it's released for a stunning 150 years.
Wow.
And not only that, it has 296 times greater potential for global warming than carbon dioxide does. And it also damages the ozone layer. So if we can reduce carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide emissions by reducing meat consumption, it's an immediate way to start reducing the release of those gases into the atmosphere. And so Robert Goodland, one of the authors of the first study I spoke about, said, the only way for most economic sectors to achieve greenhouse gas reduction on a large scale is by using renewable energy and energy efficiency. The livestock sector is a notable exception, as most of its greenhouse gas emissions are not from energy uses, but from biological processes. Therefore, it's easier, and especially important, to achieve a large and rapid greenhouse gas reduction from the livestock sector.
So we just talked about methane and nitrous oxide from animal agriculture. So the next thing we're going to move on to is how meat consumption has actually increased in recent years. Is that right, Charles?
Yeah, the amount of meat consumed globally is increasing year on year.
That's not good. That's not what we're looking for.
No. According to the World Watch Institute, meat production increased nearly fivefold between 1950 and 1997, from 44 million to 211 million tons produced. And by the way, I remember as a child, the amount of meat we used to eat was much less. In school dinners, you'd only get a very small serving of meat and in thin slices, whereas now, and I remember I first went to America and I saw the size of the steaks, I couldn't believe it. But now it's quite routine to eat lots of meat, large steaks.
Yeah.
It's considered normal. So,
and it's affecting our health, isn't it?
It is. Because the more red meat you eat, the greater danger it is to your heart. The more chances you have of having a heart problem.
So we can get into how that increase in meat consumption and how we can combat that. For now, we're going to take a little break, so we'll see you in a minute.
If you find what we've been talking about interesting, you can obtain a lot more information from my book, which is called Save Your Heart, Lose Weight and Help Save the Planet, and it's available on Amazon. So before the break today, we were talking about how the worldwide consumption of meat is increasing all the time. And an example of that is that the amount of meat produced per person is 36 kilograms, produced for each person, I should say, which is more than double the level that in 1950s.
Yeah.
And that increase in the consumption of meat per person is most in the world's most affluent nations, but it's also increasing in most countries. And this research from the World Watch Institute points out that it's estimated that 1 in every 6 people in the world go hungry each day, and that the grain could be used more efficiently to feed people. Instead, it's being used diverted to produce grain for meat production. In the US, 123 kilograms of meat was eaten per person per year, while in India or Indonesia, the corresponding figure was 3 kilograms and 2 kilograms, which is minuscule in comparison per person per year.
Big difference there, yeah.
And they state that every kilo of meat represents several kilos of grain, either corn or wheat, that could be consumed directly by humans instead of diverting it to animal agriculture.
Absolutely.
So, and if 670 million tons of the world's grain used for animal feed were reduced by just 10%, this would free up 67 million tons of grain, or enough to feed 225 million people, or keep up with the world population growth for the next 3 years.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it just seems so simple.
If each American reduced his or her meat consumption by only 5%, roughly equivalent to eating one less dish of meat per week, 7.5 million tons of grain would be saved, enough to feed the 25 million people, which is roughly the number estimated go hungry in the United States each day.
So it's kind of a justice or
social
justice issue as well as an environmental issue.
And also, we're not saying, as we've said before, that you have to give up meat, but even just reducing the amount, even by not having one meal per week, or just having it once a day, having vegetarian days, that's all you need to do to make a difference.
I think we forget the power we have as consumers to change, to affect change.
Yes.
And then definitely reducing meat.
Yeah, this is one area where we definitely have power. We choose what we eat. And that gives us enormous power to change things. So the article from World Watch concludes by saying, reducing global meat consumption even slightly amongst the affluent offers a win-win solution to a range of pressing global problems. Massive reductions in meat consumption in industrial nations will ease the healthcare burden on those countries while improving public health. Declining livestock herds will take the pressure off range lands and grain lands and allowing agricultural resources and natural habitats to rejuvenate. As populations grow, lowering meat consumption worldwide will allow for more efficient use of declining per capita land and water resources, while at the same time making grain more affordable to the world's chronically hungry.
Yeah, it's really interesting how, small changes, to me, it's a small change, just eating just a little bit less meat. And then gradually maybe going to even less meat. You don't have to cut all meat straight away. Can have such a huge impact, in terms of social justice, in terms of the climate emergency.
It's also tastier. I think just a piece of meat on a plate, it's much nicer if you combine it with a lot of vegetables and potatoes or rice and
lentils, beans.
And in Chinese cooking, it always struck me that the amount of meat they used was much smaller. You'd have a stir fry and meat would be a small part of it. Vegetables would be the main part of the stuff.
So moving on, is our current pattern of meat consumption sustainable?
In a word, no, it's not. The present ever-increasing level of meat consumption globally is not sustainable, and it was clearly demonstrated in an important article in another highly prestigious scientific journal, Nature, which we mentioned before. And this article was published in 2014, and it was authored by 2 US academics, David Tillman of the University of Minnesota and Michael Clark of the University of California, Santa Barbara. And this research article points out that global trends towards diets high in processed foods, refined sugars, refined fats, oils and meat has contributed to 2.1 billion people becoming overweight and obese. This in turn has contributed to raising rates of type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, and some cancers. And for example, in China, the change from a traditional diet to a, quote, modern diet with the above characteristics caused the incidence of type 2 diabetes to increase from less than 1% of the population in 1980 to 10% of the population in 2008.
Oh my God.
So the type of diet that's consumed strongly influences, as we've been saying, greenhouse gas emissions. It is well known that relative to animal-based foods, as we've been saying, plant-based foods have lower GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. For example, eating beef or lamb causes greenhouse gas emissions per gram of protein that are about 250 times those of eating legumes per gram. Eating dairy, eggs, non-trawling seafood, poultry and pork have much lower emissions per gram of protein than the ruminant meats like cattle and sheep.
Okay.
20 servings of vegetables have less greenhouse gas emissions than one serving of beef.
Wow.
And if less meat and fish is eaten per person, this obviously lessens greenhouse gas emissions. The article went on to say that globally, diets have been changing in consistent ways as incomes and urbanization have increased during the last 50 years. There's been a consistent trend towards higher per capita, per person demand for meat, empty calories or junk food, and total calories. So as your income increases, as they increased between 1961 and 2009, there was an equivalent increase per capita demand for meat. In 2009, the 15 richest nations had a 750% higher per capita demand for meat from protein from ruminant seafood, poultry and pork than the 24 poorest nations. So that's quite a difference, 750% greater than the poorer nations were eating meat. And generally, legume protein demand decreased as animal protein demand increased. So your soya, beans, and everything were eaten less as people ate more meat. Also, as people get richer, the demand for empty calories, processed foods like crisps, or junk foods like crisps and cakes and sweets tended to increase globally as incomes increased. These are the calories from refined fats, refined sugars, alcohols and oils. So, and not surprising, the total per capita demand for calories also increased with income. And there's also, as your income increases, there's an increased tendency to waste food. The article estimates, this is all information from the Nature article. The article estimates that relative to the average global diet of 2009, if trends continue, the 2050 global average diet would have 15% more total calories, 11% more total protein, and the composition of the diet would shift to having 61% more empty calories.
So that's junk food.
Yes. 18% fewer servings of fruits and vegetables, 2% less plant protein, 23% more pork and poultry, and 31% more ruminant meat, cattle and sheep, which, as we've said, is the most greenhouse gas producing. Also 58% more dairy and egg, and 82% more fish and seafood.
And that's going to have knock-on effect on the health system too. Like, they're obviously less healthy, like junk food is clearly a less healthy option. So...
Type 2 diabetes, everything, heart disease is going to increase if the present trends
So I
continue.
wonder, like, should governments be investing in ways to combat this change in, like, tighter regulations around junk food and stuff like that? I can't think of an exact solution.
They are limiting sugar in things like drinks.
There's sugar tax, which is a good move.
But I think the biggest thing has to be education, because people really don't realise, as they should, the effects. And that education, in my view, should start in the schools. To really educate people the effect it's going to have on their bodies as well as the effects on the planet.
Because it is an investment into the future, because obviously this, like, if people are eating unhealthily, they're going to be unhealthy, and it's going to have an effect on the public health system. Where it'll be busier. Overwhelmed.
So the article goes on to point out that diets are important, as we've said, an important determinant of our health.
Yes.
While adequate nutrition, having enough to eat, improves your health, excessive amounts of certain things that you're eating decreases your health. And they conclude by saying that dietary choices link environmental sustainability and human health.
Absolutely,
And the current dietary trajectories are linked with significant increases in diseases that we've been describing, and also globally with significant increases in greenhouse gases and land clearing. And plausible solutions are offered by alternative kinds of diets, like the diet
we talked about in our first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
If you want to have a look. Yeah.
So, and they say that if these alternative type of diets are widely adopted, the global health benefits will be substantial, and it's also gives an enormous opportunity for environmental improvement as well as public health improvement.
Yeah, I can see that as well. For now, we're going to take a little break, so we'll see you in a minute. So now we're going to move on to the recipe of the week. So this week we have spicy Mexican rice. How spicy is it? Because if it's too spicy, I won't be able to have it.
Well, it's enough to get your taste buds hyper-stimulated.
Might be too spicy for me.
So, yeah, it's a dish now that serves... It's not that spicy, actually.
Okay.
It's a dish that serves 4 people, and it can be made with tomato passata, the kind that you get in the supermarket, in the bottles, and fresh vegetables that you have at home. So let's get right to it, and these are the ingredients. And just a reminder as well that we're using the cup measurement, and a US cup contains 240 mils. If you have a cup that size, that's convenient. I happen to have one. But also, if not, you can use the measuring jug for 240 mils. And these are the ingredients: half a cup of canned pulped tomatoes, or else you can use half a cup of finely sliced tomatoes, half a cup of sliced green pepper, half a cup of sliced onions, a quarter cup of diced carrots, a quarter cup of the tomato passata sauce, or tomato sauce, other tomato sauce, 2 garlic cloves, again finely sliced, a quarter teaspoon of salt, and 1 cup of whole grain brown rice, long grain if possible. So the method is you combine the tomatoes, the pepper, the onions, the carrot, the salsa, the garlic and salt, and a cup of water in a saucepan, and you bring this to the boil and then to a simmer on a moderate heat, and then you add the rice and stir it in with a fork. Then you cover this and reduce it to the lowest setting for a simmer, and continue to simmer for 25 minutes, and then let it stand. And then cover for 5 minutes, and then transfer into a serving bowl and fluff it with a fork. And you can have this spicy Mexican rice with some vegan sausages or veggie burgers.
Yum.
And it's a tasty, quick, simple meal.
Yeah, fantastic. So is that everything we have for today?
It is, just to say that our recipes are available in social media.
Yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook.
At Your Heart, Our Planet. And we'll be continuing with the environmental theme a bit longer, and before we go back to diets again. So we'll be back in our next episode talking more about the environment and how easy it is actually for us to do positive things.
Absolutely.
And one final thing is that if you want more details, you can find all the information we've been talking about in my book, Save Your Heart, Lose Weight and Help Save the Planet, which is available on Amazon as a paperback and Kindle. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Goodbye, guys.